Welcome to Weekly News Highlights, where we bring you some of the biggest stories that made the headlines this week. I'm Song Yoo-jin here at Arirang's virtual studio. South Korea and the United Kingdom co-hosted a two-day summit on artificial intelligence in Seoul this week, a follow-up to last November's first AI safety summit in the UK. What did world leaders and some of the biggest IT giants discuss and agree on? Moving on, as widely expected, the Bank of Korea froze its benchmark interest rate for the 11th time in a row at 3.5%. We'll analyze the factors behind this decision and discuss when we might see rate cuts begin. Finally, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash alongside other high-ranking officials, including the country's foreign minister. The country's state media reported that the crash was caused by an unspecified technical failure. So we begin this week with the AI Seoul Summit held jointly by South Korea and the UK from Tuesday to Wednesday. World leaders promised to bolster global cooperation to advance AI safety, innovation, and inclusivity, while IT giants pledged to develop the technology safely. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has more on the key takeaways from the summit.
South Korea, the United Kingdom, the United States and other world powers have called for stronger global cooperation to advance safety, innovation and inclusion in artificial intelligence, to further human well-being and democratic values. This came in a joint Seoul declaration following the AI Seoul Summit co-hosted by South Korea and the UK. On Tuesday evening Seoul time, President Yoon Suk-yeol and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak chaired the first closed-door session online, attended by the leaders of the Group of Seven Nations and Singapore, and the Vice Presidents of the United States and the European Commission. In his opening remarks, Yoon said that given the hyperconnectivity and borderless nature of the digital space, the world needs common digital norms to first ensure the safety of AI, minimizing the potential negative impact on societies and protecting well-being and democracy. He also called for free and open innovation to stimulate economic growth and tackle global problems like climate change, as well as to ensure all people benefit from the technology. Such points were reflected in this whole declaration reached by the participating countries and Australia. That document calls for enhanced cooperation on governing AI to mitigate risks, while promoting democratic values, human rights, the rule of law and fundamental freedoms. It also raises the need for policy and governance frameworks that support socio-cultural and gender diversity, contribute to sustainable development and help bridge the digital divide. To increase the shared understanding and design of such frameworks, a separate Seoul statement of intent builds on previous commitments to strengthen global research collaboration on AI safety. The two-day Seoul Summit is a follow-up to the first AI Safety Summit held in England's Bletchley Park last year, where 28 governments recognised the significant challenges posed by AI, including in cybersecurity, biotechnology and the dissemination of misinformation. While 10 countries and the European Union adopted this Seoul declaration, Yoon noted it was reached by the heads of state and government, marking an upgrade from last year's ministerial Bletchley declaration. It also expanded the scope of focus from AI safety to include innovation and inclusivity. Recognising the need to engage the core developers of AI, the summit also included leaders of 11 IT giants, including Samsung Electronics, Naver, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta and X, who agreed to adopt the voluntary AI safety commitments to prevent AI-related risks. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, staying with artificial intelligence, AI isn't just a focus for global leaders and tech giants. It's also becoming more embedded in our daily lives through AI chatbots, AI-equipped computers, and smartphones. So what do users see as the benefits and drawbacks? Our An Sung-jin takes a closer look.
Artificial intelligence has been around for a while. Some believe that the use of AI can help them save time and allow them to focus on more important things.
The tasks you enjoy doing, do those. The tasks you don't enjoy doing, find a way to get AI to help you.
I think AI will be used even more in the future. It can help with things like research, tasks that are a bit tedious.
According to Microsoft's latest report, 3 out of 4 people use AI in their work. In Korea, it's nearly 73%. AI is no longer seen as a technological disruption, but rather a force of transformation. One expert says that our use of AI, as well as the problems that derive from it, are inevitable.
One is social innovation, and the other is an increase in productivity. That's why we use AI. It's good at things that humans were previously unable to do.
However, as AI becomes more sophisticated and widespread, danger follows, such as deepfakes, loss of jobs, and privacy violation issues. The same expert added that as the use of AI accelerates, social consensus is needed to regulate it.
There is a need for an international organization that can control the use of it, which establishes a social consensus between profit and privacy control for AI.
Another expert agrees and also cautions how it's not merely about creating regulations.
The easy answer is we write the law or the regulation to target the appropriate part of AI. But I think the better answer, the more complex, the key is making sure that the regulation is appropriately scoped.
Our use of AI is only going to increase as it becomes woven into the fabric of our lives. But guidance and regulations are needed for its proper integration into our daily lives. 한성진, 아리랑 뉴스.
So for our weekly focus this week, the Bank of Korea in its final monetary policy meeting of the first half of the year has announced its intentions to keep its benchmark interest rate frozen yet again amid persistent inflation. For more on this, we have our finance correspondent Lee Soo-jin in the studio. Welcome, Soo-jin.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Soo-jin, so the key interest rate is one of the most important economic variables for any country because high interest rates mean that borrowing becomes more expensive, leading people to spend less, lowering overall demand, and subsequently easing inflation. So first of all, tell us what was South Korea's decision in its monetary policy meeting in May?
Sure. So like you mentioned earlier, South Korea's central bank decided to keep its benchmark interest rate steady at 3.5% as widely expected. And this marks the 11th consecutive meeting that the BOK has decided to freeze the rate. The base rate was last raised in January last year to 3.5%, the 10th consecutive rate hike. Here's what the Bank of Korea governor said were the reasons behind this decision.
While inflation is slowing, given the signs of recovery in economic growth, the exchange rate volatility, and geopolitical risks, we have decided to maintain our current monetary tightening stance.
Right, so the BOK governor mentioned inflation. So Soo-jin, can you tell us how high have consumer prices have been here in the country for the past several months?
Well, they're actually showing signs of easing, especially in April. But there also hasn't been enough economic data yet for the Bank of Korea to be confident that consumer prices are stabilizing. The Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, fell below the 3% range in April for the first time since January. But consumer prices had seen on-year increases of 3.1% in February and March. And the 2.9% on-year growth in consumer prices in April still remains above the central bank's target of 2%. Prices for agriculture goods, livestock, and fishery products were up 10.6% on year in April. Fresh fruit saw huge price increases, with the price of apples up by more than 80% on year and pears up by more than 100%.
Right, so besides inflation or high prices, are there any other factors that really led to the BOK continuing its decision to freeze its interest rate?
Yes, so another factor was the U.S. Central Bank's rate freeze decision. The Fed, in its most recent May meeting, decided to keep interest rates unchanged for the 6th consecutive time. And Federal Reserve officials are saying there is no rush to cut interest rates despite inflation showing signs of easing. The U.S. Labor Department showed that consumer prices in the United States were up 3.4% on year in April, slightly less than the 3.5% on year rise seen the previous month. But several regional Federal Reserve Bank presidents said in separate interviews just last Thursday that more economic data is required to be confident that inflation is on course to reach the 2% target, suggesting that interest rates will remain high for longer. And minutes from the most recent Federal Open Market Committee released on Thursday also showed that there were concerns over a lack of confidence in the slowing of inflation. Let's take a listen to what an expert said on this.
The short answer seems to be the Fed is not giving up on that target, but it's an arbitrary target based in some academic, some practical research. And if the Fed is unable to hit 2%, I would not be surprised to see if the goalposts move a bit, closer to 2.5.
Given these recent commentaries, economists are not expecting to see rate cuts until the Fed's September open market committee at the earliest.
So could you tell us what's the current interest rate gap between the United States and Korea? And I think a lot of people will be curious about why this is influencing or impacting the Korean Central Bank's decision.
Well, the gap's actually quite big right now. In fact, it's at its largest ever at 2 percentage points, and because of this, it's quite unlikely that the BOK will cut interest rates ahead of the United States. And here's why they won't, according to an expert.
Well, specifically, if the U.S. interest rate is higher than Korea's, as it is currently, then we expect Korean investors to invest more in the United States because the returns there are likely higher. So we expect less money coming into Korea, and that makes the Korean won weaker while making the U.S. dollar stronger.
Right, Soo-jin, last but not least, the Bank of Korea also released new economic projections on its meeting on Thursday. So can you tell us what they are?
Sure. So first of all, the BOK raised its economic growth outlook for this year to 2.5%, up from 2.1%, which further adds to projections that the key interest rate will not be lowered for the time being. The BOK governor said that the forecast was raised mainly because of external factors, such as the robust global IT sector and strong growth in the U.S. economy, as well as signs of recovery in domestic demand. And this year's inflation forecast was maintained at 2.6%.
Right, so I guess this means that the Bank of Korea will continue to keep a close eye on prices as well as the Fed's monetary decision. All right, thank you so much for the wrap-up, Soo-jin, today. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
And staying with the economy, it seems that semiconductors are playing a big part in driving Korea's robust exports. According to the Korea Customs Service on Tuesday, exports in the first 20 days of May rose 1.5% compared to the same period last year, coming to a total of over $32.7 billion. The semiconductor industry saw a large jump of 45.5% during this period, while auto exports shrank by just over 4%. Now, expectations are high that the value of outbound shipments for May overall will continue the trend of rising exports and record an 8th straight month of on-year growth. However, the purchasing power of households in Korea is heading in the opposite direction. The country's real household income for the first quarter, adjusted for inflation, saw the sharpest on-year fall in 7 years. Our Park Gun-woo tells us why.
South Korea's household income saw an increase in the first quarter of the year, but taking inflation into effect, inflation-adjusted income, or buying power, fell in the largest range in 7 years due to higher prices. According to Statistics Korea on Thursday, the monthly average income per household in Q1 was around 5.12 million won, or over $3,750, an increase of 1.4% year-on-year. But when considering inflation of 3% during that period, income dropped by 1.6% from the year before. This was the sharpest fall among all first quarters since 2017, when it dropped by 2.5%. Income earned through wages, the biggest part of household income, dropped 1.1% year-on-year. When adjusted for inflation, that figure fell by nearly 4% from the previous year, which was the highest drop ever since related data was first compiled in 2006.
The rise in consumer prices and slashed incentives given by major companies were the main factors behind this fall.
Data also showed that the monthly average amount of spending per household in the first quarter was nearly 2.91 million won, or over $2,100, up 3% year-on-year. They showed that people spend more on food and non-alcoholic beverages, along with on accommodation and entertainment. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea is set to hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month for the first time in 10 years. The country's top envoy to the UN said he hopes this could push for in-depth discussions on cybersecurity and other global issues. Lee Seung-jae reports.
For the first time in a decade, South Korea is set to hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month. South Korea, which is a non-permanent UNSC member, will chair the council for 1 month as the council's 15 member states rotate on a monthly basis. During a press meeting, Seoul's top envoy to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, said undertaking the presidency is an important role in coordinating the UNSC agenda, adding that South Korea will be ready to convene a UNSC meeting in the event of a provocation by North Korea. Hwang emphasized that the role of the chairing country is important as it affects the direction of discussions on key global issues and international opinion. During its month-long presidency, South Korea will seek to hold high-level public discussions on the topic of cybersecurity. Seoul has been heavily focused on such issues due to evolving threats by Pyongyang in the security domain. For this, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol plans to preside over the session. South Korea's top envoy to the UN stressed that malicious cyber activities on key infrastructure and theft of civilian data and cryptocurrency are threats that all countries face. Hwang added that despite the importance of cybersecurity, the topic has not been dealt with as an official UNSC agenda. Seoul also plans to hold public discussions under the theme Child and Armed Conflicts at the request of the UN Secretariat. The ambassador expressed his hope that South Korea's presidency will contribute to the nation's push to expand its diplomatic horizons and emerge as a global pivotal state. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the international front, the world this week was rocked by the shocking death of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi. He and the country's foreign minister, along with several others, were found dead on Monday, hours after their helicopter crashed in fog near the Azerbaijan border on Sunday. So what's next for Iran after the death of its second most powerful leader? Experts say immediate changes in Iran's ruling system or major policies are unlikely, as these are decided by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. However, Raisi, regarded as a hardliner and conservative, was widely seen as a potential successor and has substantial backing from the leader himself. Khamenei served as president before becoming supreme leader in 1989, following the death of the Islamic Republic's founder, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The other suggests successor is Khamenei's second son, but a hereditary succession could pose a legitimacy crisis as the country was established as an alternative to monarchy. Now, in the long term, this could open the door for other factions or figures to emerge as serious contenders, which could bring about changes to Iran's domestic and foreign policies.
What will happen with Iran's domestic and international policies depends on who's the president. We have some candidates that belong to the reformist camp. If they win the presidency, then I think they would want to go back to JCPOA and sort of resolve some of the difficulties Iran has had with Western governments. I'm not sure if Western governments, especially the United States, is ready to do that.
Iran has set June 28th for its next presidential election. Until then, the current first vice president will serve as the acting president. And now to the Israel-Hamas war. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor announced on Monday that he requested arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Our Iuni has more on the response from both sides and what the arrest warrant will mean if issued.
With thousands of civilians dead from the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, the International Criminal Court is now seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas's leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. According to the ICC's chief prosecutor Karim Khan on Monday, the court is seeking warrants for both on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the October 7th attacks on Israel and the subsequent war in Gaza,
as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and/or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts.
The warrant also includes Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and two other Hamas leaders, Mohammed Diab Ibrahim al-Masri and Ismail Haniyeh. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the court's decision, calling it absurd and deceitful, adding that the move was meant to target the entire state of Israel.
It is aimed against the IDF soldiers who are fighting with the utmost bravery against the vile murderers of Hamas who attacked us with horrendous brutality on October 7th.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden also criticized the ICC's decision, calling it outrageous that it's seeking to arrest Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders. He stressed that there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Hamas, too, has condemned the ICC. In a statement, Hamas separately denounced what it described as attempts to equate the victim with the executioner. Experts say that while it's unlikely that the Israeli and Hamas leaders will actually face prosecution, the arrest warrant could make it difficult for them to travel overseas, while a trial in court would be especially embarrassing for the Israeli government. 이은희, Arirang News.
And another big diplomatic development in the Middle East this week. 3 European countries, Ireland, Norway, and Spain, are set to become the latest countries to recognize Palestine as a state. Lee Seung-jae tells us why they made this decision now.
Ireland, Norway, and Spain have announced they will officially recognize Palestine as a state next week. The European nations say Palestine has the right to create an independent state and expect other countries to join in. The leaders say they're taking joint action for the sake of peace in the Middle East. According to Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, recognizing Palestine is supporting moderate forces that are on a retreating front in a protracted and cruel conflict, calling it an investment in the only solution that can bring lasting peace in the Middle East. He also called on other countries to do the same in order to ensure that the process towards a two-state solution can build momentum. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of putting the two-state solution in danger with his policy of pain and destruction in Gaza, while Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris emphasized that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. The prime ministers of all 3 nations announced the official recognition will take place next Tuesday. Meanwhile, in response to the European nations' decision to recognize Palestine as a state, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the decision, calling it a prize for terrorism.
The intention of several European countries to recognize a Palestinian state is a reward for terrorism. This evil cannot be given a state. This would be a terrorist state. It will try to repeat the massacre of October 7th again and again. We will not consent to this. Rewarding terrorism will not bring peace, neither will it stop us from defeating Hamas.
144 out of 193 member states of the UN recognize Palestine as a state. However, Britain and Australia have recently indicated in recent months that they will also follow suit, while EU members Malta and Slovenia have also made such indications. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back in Asia, Taiwan's new president William Lai Ching-te called on China to stop threatening the self-governing island. Lai's remarks came on Monday as he was sworn in as the new president, pledging to uphold Taiwan's constitution in relations with China at his inauguration ceremony. He urged Beijing to accept Taiwan's existence, respect the choice of Taiwan, show sincerity, and replace military confrontation with dialogue. Lai also showed his willingness to have cooperative exchanges with China on equal terms, starting with the tourism and education sectors. Now, 3 days later after Lai's inauguration, Beijing launched joint military drills surrounding Taiwan, mobilizing its army, navy, air force, and rocket force. China called the drills a, quote, strong punishment for Taiwan's separatist acts. China claims Taiwan as part of its territory. Now, on the cultural front, with the Korean government designating 2023 to 2024 as the Visit Korea year, the country's tourism body has been hosting various events to promote Korea and its culture abroad. And as part of this project, 49 fans of Korea and Korean culture were invited for a 5-day trip to the country this week. I had a chance to follow their day. It's a dream come true for Zev Ted, a 76-year-old YouTuber and former programmer. Popular for his Korean drama reviews and songs by his favorite artist, IU, which led IU to invite him to a concert in July, Zev is currently visiting Korea. Though he's visited Korea before, this trip is particularly special.
I can't tell you how happy I am. I'm absolutely thrilled. You know, I got here at 4:30 in the morning this morning, but I'm too excited to lie around in a hotel room. Okay, they said, oh, take a rest and come for the luncheon. No, I'm not going to miss anything.
Zev is among the 49 invitees in the Korea Invites You program organized by the Culture Ministry and the Korea Tourism Organization. So among the more than 77,000 applicants from 185 countries and receiving recommendations from overseas branches of the Korea Tourism Organization, 49 people were chosen for the Korea Invites You program, a 5-day trip to Korea where they'll get to experience Korean culture firsthand.
We organized this program as part of the 2023 to 2024 Visit Korea year. Our goal was to invite people from around the world who have a deep love and interest in Korea, as well as those with unique stories connected to our country. We want to show our appreciation for their ongoing support and share new and exciting aspects of Korean culture with them.
Take Chun-Yi Chen, for example. She and her 9 high school friends are visiting Korea together again after 20 years. Taipei's Wesley Girls High School has been selecting Korea as its graduation trip destination since 2004, with Chen's class being the first.
I've been to Korea many times, as have my classmates. But this trip, coming back together, is even more special. Many places have changed a lot since we last visited, so we're experiencing a lot of the current Korean culture. We wore hanbok 20 years ago and will do so again tomorrow. We're really looking forward to it.
After a welcoming ceremony on Tuesday, the group headed to 1 Million Dance Studio, the largest of its kind in Korea. There, they learned K-pop dance moves from chief choreographer Choi Young-jun. It was an unforgettable moment for Alex, one of Malaysia's biggest social media influencers with over 6 million followers on TikTok. Known for his K-pop dance covers, he was even named one of the best dancers of the day.
I think K-pop has one of the best choreography and dance paired together. So I just started covering in my bedroom alone with my camera in front. So to be able to stand here and learn the choreography from the choreographer himself was really meaningful to me because he represents everything that I've been standing for and my whole content as a general. And I think it'll mean a lot to my followers as well.
The day wrapped up with chimek, chicken, and baekju, which means beer in Korean. Participants enjoyed the beloved Korean combination of crispy fried chicken, fresh draft beer, and the traditional rice wine makgeolli, toasting their future adventures in Korea.
I'm half Korean. My mother is Korean, my father is English. And my special story with Korea is that I have learned so much about my culture through promoting it online, and I want to share that love with my followers. I host events, I do supper clubs, I teach people about hanbok and the history of Korean food and culture. And in doing that, I've learned more myself about Korean culture.
The group will split into 5 subgroups, each exploring different themes like Korean culture, food, and wellness, before heading home on Friday. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News. And that's all we have for weekly news highlights for this 4th week of May. Thank you for watching and I hope you have a great rest of the weekend.